Hey, what's up and hello? This is the Chris Nicole bringing you my views on life, love, and the world of entertainment through my eyes. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on what time you are watching this live. Hello, crew. Hope all is well. Make sure you hit the likety like button on the way in. So, I stumbled across a new reality show called Love and Faith Atlanta. Like literally just it randomly popped up. And I was curious and I clicked on it. And it's actually created by a network called Merge Network, if I'm not mistaken. And they are affiliated in some way with the Preachers of LA. I don't know if you guys remember that show, but I faithfully watched that show, The Preachers of LA. It was actually, I believe, produced by Lumel Plummer, the plumber guy, the one who owns Zeus. Yeah, him. So they apparently did some type of spinoff with the Preachers of LA. So now they are doing content via YouTube. And I said, you know what? Let me click on this and see what this is all about. And I must say, I was quite intrigued. However, there are a couple of things that's making me kind of do a side eye and wondering why. Oh, why? But we're going to definitely talk about that. Make sure you say hello in the chat so I know that you guys are here. I do see there are some people here. But I definitely wanted to talk about this, wanted to have a healthy dialogue about this because they actually talked about some very interesting topics that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And I said, you know what? I'm going to bring this to the crew. I'm gonna bring this to the crew because my crew, my legit crew, we like to have these type of healthy dialogues that we can discuss, whether you're on the difference of opinion on the total opposite side. It doesn't matter. As long as we respect each other, we can have these type of conversations. So let's start off with the couples that we have on the show. Now, baby, y'all know I'm bad with names. So I'm hoping I get these names right. But first, we have Pastor and First Lady Lorana Phelps. Okay. Definitely when I first saw her, I was like, oh, she giving that diva first lady, like that lady who makes sure that every freaking strand of her hair is pressed, laid, makeup is on point. She's giving all of that. And she even admits she's a beauty girl. So she does not play when it comes to her looks. And so she is actually married to, and I know I'm about to say his name wrong, Bishop Eusebio Phelps, okay? And they call him the boss pastor. Now, they have known each other since they were teenagers, apparently. He said even when she was 16 that he was going to marry her, and they went their separate ways and then ended up coming back together after they had their own marriages, their own relationship, and now they're together. Apparently, they have 7 churches. 7. Now, I have never heard of that many churches, someone owning that many churches before ever. I don't know about y'all, but I've never heard of it. But they have 7 churches in multiple states. Now, one thing I do respect about this bishop is that he has his own business. He actually has a car company. And I respect that. And let me tell you why I respect that. I respect that because it has always been a pet peeve of mine for my personal experience. I don't do well with pastors and bishops and reverends, and their only job is being a pastor, bishop, or reverend. Sorry, that's just for me. I don't know. I feel like back in the day, you had pastors who taught the word of God Sunday through Saturday, and they still worked and took care of their families. Like, I just don't know when it became a point where you actually got paid to be in the pulpit. Maybe that's just a pet peeve of mine, but I appreciate the fact that this man has his own business and he's getting his own revenue and he has church. It just kind of makes me say, maybe you're in it for the right reasons as far as teaching people the word of God versus it being a way for you to make a come up. That's all I'm saying. So I appreciate that. So then we have Tammy and Gerald Haddon. And they say Tammy is the realist. She's like the truth teller. And Gerald, they call him the Hollywood pastor. And I kept looking at Gerald and I said, you know, he looks really, really familiar. He just gives me this face that I'm like, his face it's giving me, it's familiar. And I said, why does he look like somebody I know? Like, why does he look like somebody I know? And then they said it, and then I also put two and two together. He's the brother of Deitrick Haddon. Yeah, I did an eye roll. Look, y'all want me to always keep it real. I'm gonna keep it real. I have my issues with Deitrick Haddon. I do. I remember him on Preachers of LA. My discernment. I'm not feeling him. Period. I'm not feeling him. Now, should I judge Gerald based on his brother? No. But one thing about me is that I can see a family that is into like ministry to a certain extent, like the music industry, like the Winans, for example, like they're a family of like, you know, going into gospel music. I'm curious to know if the Haddons come from a whole family of preachers, because the fact that Gerald is a preacher, I believe even Deitrick calls himself a preacher, even though I know he's more on the music side. Either way, I'll give Gerald a chance. Yeah, Deitrick. Yeah. So I was just like, oh boy, he definitely has that Deitrick personality too. Now, he may not be as flamboyant, but he definitely has that Deitrick personality. So the fact that they call him the Hollywood pastor, I said, I wonder why. I wonder why. Okay. Now, Tammy and Gerald have been married for quite some time, and they are actually award-winning producers, music producers. And they lived in LA for years, and then they ended up moving to Atlanta. So this is kind of like a whole new adjustment for them. They even mentioned how they miss LA, but this is just a whole new start for them coming to Atlanta. Then we have the single pastor, and her name is Angelic Simmons. Okay. Now, the first thing that we find out about Angelic Simmons, which I thought was just so weird, that they wanted to make sure that people knew that she has been celibate for 18 years. She has been celibate for 18 years. Now, look, praise God that she's been celibate for 18 years, but there should be more to this woman than y'all starting it off saying she's single and she's been celibate for 18 years. Okay. Luckily, we got more layers to her later on. But what I do remember is that she was at one point married and her husband passed, but she has been celibate for 18 years, single for 18 years. Make sure you guys hit the like button on the way in. I will answer those questions later. I kind of want to go through the whole review and then we can get back to it. But yeah, so with that, that is kind of her story, or what we introduced to her as far as like her thing. She's single. She, you know, doesn't really want a pastor. She kind of wants a businessman, but she is just waiting for the right fit. All right. Now, one of the first things that we see is that Bishop is Eusebio. Y'all already know. I'm gonna just call him Bishop Phelps and Bishop Brent Tiggs. They are best friends. Apparently, they have known each other for years. Because interesting enough, Bishop Eusebio Phelps, and I'm gonna go back to his picture. He used to be in the streets. He used to be in the streets. He went from the streets to salvation. Praise God. And so he actually said that it was bad for him. And at one point, he was literally in a club at one point smoking, I think, you know who, a ooh-wee. And he was crying in the club because he knew he had definitely fell from grace. He grew up, you know, in the church, but he definitely got into the streets really hard for like 20 years. And at one point, he spent 51 months in federal prison. And out of those 51 months, 8 months, he was in the hole. Now, I don't know if y'all done heard about the whole experience, but a lot of people either lose their mind in the hole or, they find revelation in the hole. But that hole means that you were isolated by yourself. So this man definitely came from a rough, talk about rock bottom. And now he has his own business and like 7 churches. But he did tell us, let's start off with the fact that this man said he keeps it real. He don't have no filter. He says it like it is. So that tells me, even with the 3 episodes that they currently have and what he said, he does not care what you think. He is always going to go by his principles. And I am always going to respect people who go by their principles. Whether you feel that it's right or wrong, you got to respect someone who's going to stand 10 toes down on what they believe in. So with that, going back to Bishop Tiggs, and I believe the other pastor name is Bishop Jeremy Tuck. Okay. Now, Bishop Brent and Bishop Eusebio Phelps, they're best friends. They've known each other for so long. At one point, they went into business together as far as a restaurant is concerned. But we find out Bishop Brent has his own restaurant in Marietta, to be exact, for those who live in Georgia. He has his own soul food restaurant, and I, again, appreciate the fact that he has a job. He has his own business. His only job is not to minister. Again, that makes me itch. I like people who definitely have their own income and they're actually preaching. So he has his own business, and him and Eusebio, they have a mac and cheese cook-off. Now, interesting enough, I will say this because I'm a foodie. Bishop Phelps, Eusebio, put mustard in his mac and cheese. I have never seen that in my life. I have never seen that in my life. I was like, did I just see mustard go into some mac and cheese? And he swore up and down his mac and cheese is the best. His mac and cheese is better than his mama's. So they have a cook-off. And so Bishop Jeremy Tuck and Bishop Gerald Hatton, or Pastor Gerald Hatton, they actually taste both Brent's and Eusebio's mac and cheese. And they actually said Eusebio had the better mac and cheese. But then they try to go to Bishop Tiggs and say, we can't sit up there and say that his mac and cheese is bad because we in his house. Like, we can't sit up there and say it's bad, but they claim even with mustard in the mac and cheese, it was a good mac and cheese. But with that being said, so what happens is that they end up inviting all of the cast members to their house. So the ladies kind of have their section, and then the guys have their section. Now, this is when things get interesting, very interesting, and we start to hear some backstories. All right. Now, Angelica and Lorona are really good friends. They've been friends. Yes, girl, mustard. They have been friends for like 10 years. And so, of course, Lorona's like, girl, we need to find you a husband. Like, when you need to get a husband. And she was like, I'll get a husband. She was like, I'm just waiting for the right fit. She's like, I think you are so picky too. You know how friends are when they trying to tell you, girl, you need to find this, you need to find that. Like, it's time. It's definitely time. So at that point, we have Jeremy Tuck walk in when he's doing the mac and cheese test. And I realized that they call him the rebel pastor. Okay, stay with me here. They call him the rebel pastor. And I say, why are they calling him the rebel pastor? We'll find out later why they call him the rebel pastor. So back to the ladies, they start talking about the issues of patriarchy in the church. All right. And we find out that Pastor Angelica, I hope I'm saying her name right. Y'all know I'll be messing up names, honey. We found out that Pastor Angelica, which is the single pastor, she said when her husband passed, she was the lead pastor. She was a lead pastor in that church. But when her husband passed, that denomination that they were a part of at the time literally took the church from under her. And they told her that she was just supposed to be laced. And it was like, what does lace mean? They said, just sit there and be pretty and just be the first lady. In other words, don't have an opinion, don't do anything, don't have a ministry, just sit there and be laced. And so when I guess she wasn't having it, and she felt like she was called to continue to minister and do what she was supposed to do for the calling of God, they brought 20 sheriffs in her church to get her out of the church because they didn't believe in women pastors. Let me repeat that again. When she decided that she wanted to continue to minister, they brought 20 police officers, sheriffs, popos to the church to get her up out of the church. Now, she said she could have sued them because she had the legal paperwork pretty much saying that that was their church, and she could have really sued them. So, of course, they were trying to make sure, you know what I'm saying, that they were trying to be on her good side. She ends up leaving the church, and she takes half of the congregation with her because, of course, they even saw that her, you know, she was getting treated unfairly. So this is one of the things that they were talking about that are very uncomfortable topics in the church. The sexism, the patriarchy, the fact that women should not be leaders in church, women shouldn't be pastors in church, women can't be prophets. All of that stuff happens in a lot of these churches, and they don't want to talk about it. So I appreciate the fact that they're talking about it and letting us know the type of stuff they've experienced on their own and what they have gone through. Now, Tammy says her and Gerald are like partners when it comes to their church. They are literally like co-pastors. So he doesn't see her as beneath him or whatever the case may be. She will preach one Sunday, he will preach another Sunday. So he says they're equal. All right. And so I appreciate that they were talking about the dark side of a lot of churches, because let's be clear, a lot of these churches they're not holy temples, they're businesses. Bottom line, they're businesses. And they see it as that and only that. So then we find out Pastor and First Lady Phelps' story. She lost her son. Now, this is a picture of her son and her husband. Her son was unalived. And she said her son being unalived is what pushed her into ministry. Okay. She said that's what pushed her into ministry, was that her son was unalive. And she said that if she did not find ministry, she would have drowned herself in depression and everything else. So literally going into ministry is what saved her. Now, crazy enough, 2 weeks before they're filming this segment, she had also lost her mother. She lost her mother literally 2 weeks before they were filming this, and yet they were still willing to do the show and host this actual scene. And what I loved about it is there was like an actual production, like behind the scenes, where Angelica and Phelps were talking, and she said, First Lady Phelps said, you know, people kept calling me when my mom passed, asking me if I needed anything. She would say, no, not Angelica. Angelica didn't call me to ask me if I needed anything. Angelica stopped everything she did and came over to me and was there for me. And I said, that's what I'm talking about. Because see, that's the type of friend I am. I'm not about to call you and give you that, do you need anything? I'm there. I'm there because that's the type of friendship I want. I want someone who is going to be there, not just do the little foo-foo stuff, but come into action and be like, I am here for you. And so I love their relationship. They even laugh about the fact that the reason why they kind of got close is because of how they were so prim and proper with their hair done and makeup done. And, you know, she was just like, First Lady Phelps was like, honey, I come from the beauty industry. I come from the beauty world. And sometimes people be looking at me like I'm made up. I need somebody who act just like me. They like to get their hair done, nails done, and all of that stuff. So I thought that was cute. And even Tammy said, ooh, they had lashes, they had their hair done. And she was like, and I'm coming in just, you know what I'm saying, looking regular. But they had definitely a really good vibe, even though they did not know Tammy. It seems like they kind of still had like a good fit when they were talking about certain things as far as the church is concerned, and as far as things going on in their personal lives. So then we get to the topic of all topics, because y'all know they in Atlanta, and I think y'all know where I'm about to go. Once somebody asked, how do you manage the gay community in the church? So Bishop Brent says, I don't. meaning that they can come to my church, they are welcome in my church, but I don't do any type of gay affirming. They're welcome, but he does not affirm the lifestyle. And so at that point, they also asked Jeremy Tuck, who they called the rebel pastor. And they asked him. And he said, oh, they're accepted. No problems at all whatsoever. They're accepted. And they can actually, do whatever. They're here. And he kept saying that he's a Jesus model church. And so, yeah, he has no problem. He has no problem. Okay. So, and this is why I said this is an interesting conversation. And see, look, Danielle already going. This is an interesting conversation. This is why I wanted to have this via live. So at that point, Gerald Haddon says, well, I have a gay son. And Bishop Brent looks at him like, what? And Bishop Brent in the confessional was like, shocked the heck out of me. Like, he was like, I was not expecting that. And he said, yes, I have a gay son. And he was like, and he's not part-time gay. He's like full-blown gay. Okay. And so Tammy actually speaks to the ladies about this son and says that he comes around the church, but he's not interested in really being around the church. And they said that they make it very sure to their son that, hey, we love you. You are our son, but also understand what we believe in as well. Okay. So then at that point, Angelica said that, she invites the LGBTQIA community in her church, but she works on deliverance. And I'm assuming what she meant was deliverance of the lifestyle. Like, they're welcome, but they are there to pretty much get ministered and pretty much get healed, so to speak. Okay. So then Tammy says, well, I don't think it's a deliverance issue. It's a flesh issue. And that you have to control your flesh. Okay, that's what she says. Now, Gerald sits up there and says, at the end of the day, my son is my son. And if someone told me to step down as pastor or disown my son, I'm going to step down as pastor because that's my baby and that's my seed first. I'm no longer a pastor. Okay. So then at that point, I was like, okay, now I'm like, listen to this conversation, this ping pong back and forth, right? And so then Bishop Eusebio, Bishop Phelps, the one who said that he don't hold his tongue, he tells like it is. He asked Gerald Haddon, because he has the gay son, he said, would you ordain your son? He said, would you ordain your son? And I'm going to be honest with y'all. And I'm going to send you guys the link so you guys can look at it. It's going to be in the description so you guys can go and look at it for yourselves. He hesitated to answer that question. He did. And he started to give it like an explanation. And Phelps said, no, it's either yes or no. Would you ordain your openly gay son or an openly gay man or woman? Bishop Brent Tiggs, his best friend, says no. Jeremy, the one that they call the rebel pastor, says, I have ordained someone who's gay. And he said, I, again, am a Jesus model pastor. Now, I kept saying, what is a Jesus model pastor? Like, I don't know what that means. But when Gerald dodges the question, he says, look, we all sin, or whatever the case may be. We all got sin on us. And so, but I think the reason why, of course, he dodged the question, and this is just my opinion on it, he has his pastor hat and then he has his father hat. And I think instantly he went into the father hat because he did not want to answer that question as a pastor. But he also didn't want to answer that question, in my opinion, on that camera. He didn't want to answer that question. So with that being said, I'm intrigued and I'm listening, right? Because I'm like, this is something that a lot of people don't want to have a conversation about. And then he walks in. Yeah, he walks in. Look, I'm gonna tell y'all right now. There, like I've told you guys, for those who've been with me for a very long time, when I get a certain feeling about someone, it is what it is. And I'm sorry, this man gives me gas. And you're going to say, oh, Chris Nicole, that's disgusting. He gives you gas. Well, yes, gas is disgusting, and I feel he's disgusting too. It's my opinion. It is what it is. So he walks in, and I said, who made this show? Who made this show, and why is he here? Why is he here? Okay, like seriously. And they greet him like he is just the best of the best. Hi, are you, sir? How you doing? And he come in acting like, you know, he holier than thou. And so they continue the conversation. And Gerald Haddon is saying, we all got sin on us. And, you know, he's like, I could smell sin on y'all now. It's just that, you know what I'm saying? It's just checked. And here go Blueberry. The Blueberry over here talking about some, that's just ribs. You smell ribs. In other words, he was trying to make fun saying that ain't no sin on him. You smell ribs. Yeah, we smell flesh because that's what ribs is, flesh. Yeah, we sure do smell flesh on you, sir. So at that point, we're literally sitting up here. Honestly, once he came into the picture, I was just like, okay, this conversation is going downhill because I ain't got nothing. Why do we even have to hear him talk? I don't want to hear him talk. But then this is when he tries to sit up there and explain himself because now he's making this about him. He says that he's the newest one out of all of those pastors and bishops that's in Atlanta because, you know, now he actually runs New Birth in Atlanta, okay? For those who know New Birth, that is, believe, Eddie Long's church before, you know, he passed. And so he said that he was invited to, I guess, like a LGBTQIA church conference, and he saw one of the kids that used to go to his church in Baltimore, and apparently they were really close. A lot of people, every time, you know, they would see Jamal, they would see this boy, and they would sit up there and say, that's your son, that's your son. And he said when he went to that church conference, he saw him there at the church conference, and he asked him, like, how long you been in Atlanta? And the boy said for several years. Now, apparently he's known this boy since he was in his preteens or his teens. This boy now is like in his mid-20s. And he was like, so you've been in Atlanta for several years. And so in other words, even though Jamal had been at New Birth for about 3 or 4 years, this boy, or I should say this man now, never came to New Birth to actually see Jamal Bryant. And so I guess because of the fact that he felt uncomfortable going to the church. So Jamal says at that point, he apologized to him because he didn't make him feel comfortable enough to come to his father. And I was like, what father are you talking about? Are you talking about you, or are you talking about his heavenly father? Because he literally said, I apologize if you know you didn't feel comfortable coming to your father. And I was like, who's, because especially coming out of your mouth, sir, I'm trying to figure out if this was actually your son or what. But at that point, he said that they tried to spin it and make it seem like he apologized to the whole entire community, the LGBTQIA community, when in fact he only apologized to that particular young man. But again, he tries to say that the Black church are like pioneers of the cancel culture. Now, with that being said, I would agree with that. I would agree that in general, not only the Black church, but a lot of times Black people in general have no grace unless it's for a celebrity or someone who's super famous or someone that they like. But typically Black people are real quick when you don't like If they don't like something that you said, they will be quick to cancel you, block you, whatever the case may be. They don't want to have open dialogue. So I agree with him on that. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's coming from Jamal Bryant. So, as I say, sometimes right message, wrong messenger, in my opinion. All right. But then Bishop Phelps comes back and he got his foot on their neck. Like, I mean, foot on their neck. And he's like asking Jeremy, the rebel pastor, he said, okay, you said you've ordained someone gay. Would you ordain a practicing robber? He said, you ordain someone who's practicing robbing people. Would you ordain that person in your church? And he keeps saying, we are a Jesus model church. And Jamal said, look, you done said that 3 times already, this Jesus model church. What you think our churches are? And so I was like, well, I don't know what your church is, Sir Bryant. I don't really know. But at the same time, what I guess Jeremy was trying to say is Jesus' motto was to love everyone and accept everyone. And that's what his beliefs are. Now, again, that is his belief. He stands 10 toes down. Phelps, his belief, he stands 10 toes down. I respect both of them because they are standing 10 toes down on their beliefs. And one thing about Jeremy Tuck, he said Phelps has always been that way. He stands 10 toes down on his principles, on what he feels the word is, and that's just who he is. That's always been who he is as a person. So then they get into baptizing. So they pretty much all agreed, besides Jeremy and someone else, and I'm going to mention in a minute. They all pretty much said that if you have a same gender couple who has a baby, they don't baptize that baby during church service, the main church service in the congregation. They don't do it. They either baptize the baby in the back or when the congregation has left and church is over. All right. Now, when I was growing up in the church that I grew up in, of course, this was before same-sex marriage actually became legal. I remember that only married couples could actually have their babies baptized in front of the congregation. I do remember that. And so at that point, what happened is that Bishop Brent Tiggs, who said that he does not, he accepts them coming to his church, but he does not approve of the lifestyle. He says that he would actually baptize that baby in front of the congregation. A same gender loving couple, he would baptize the baby. And so at that point, his best friend Eusebius kind of perked up and he said, wait a minute now. Wait a minute. You telling me that you don't agree with the lifestyle, but you would literally have that baby baptized in front of the congregation? And he at first was hesitant, but finally he said yes. He said, yes, I would. Yes. He said, because the baby is innocent. He said the baby is innocent. And even Jabal, even Gerald was like, you wouldn't do that. No, you wouldn't. You would not do that. So once Gerald even said something like that, that told me Gerald's answer. He would not ordain his son. Once Gerald was like, you wouldn't do that, that means that he would not ordain his son. He just didn't want to say it on camera. He didn't want to say it on camera. So then at that point, Brent said he stands 10 toes down. He stands 10 toes down. He said, yes, I would, because that baby's innocent. And then so Bishop Phelps said, well, then you might as well just accept all of it then. But here's my thing in the situation. Let me ask you this, Bishop Phelps. Would you actually baptize a baby in front of a congregation of a single mother? Would you do that? Would you actually baptize a baby of a single mother who is heterosexual but is not married? So this is where it kind of gets tricky in a situation on what you believe or what you don't believe. So I wish somebody would have asked that to him and said, well, would you actually baptize a baby coming from a single mama in front of the church? Because he was definitely like, well, if that's the case, Bishop Brent, you might as well accept it all. He was like, you might as well accept it all. Because I remember growing up in the church that I grew up in, when women had babies outside of wedlock, the pastor would still baptize the baby, but it was after church service. I remember that verbatim. I didn't understand it, but I understand now what his beliefs were. But yeah, he would still baptize them, but it would not be in front of the congregation because of how they felt like it would look. This was a very interesting conversation. I'm going to put the link in the description box because I want you guys to look at it. These are very short episodes, maybe like 15, 20 minutes max. I would love to give y'all feedback on this because there are pastors who are truly about the word, and regardless on if you believe what they stand for, that's what they believe in. But then you have pimp pastors in the pulpit who literally, in my opinion, are just in it for the greed, the money, and the notoriety. Which is why I have a problem with seeing some people on this show. But anyways, let me move on. So then we have Bishop Phelps, who actually is, and this is, by the way, this is Pastor Jeremy Tuck, just in case I only showed him one time. That's who they call the rebel pastor. And that is, of course, the Haddons. And then we have Bishop Brent, who I showed earlier, who said that he doesn't accept the lifestyle, but he will definitely baptize the baby in front of the congregation. So we have Bishop Phelps actually trying to teach his son the actual do's and don'ts of the car business. And he's on him because he's like, I'm trying to give you this business. Nobody gave me nothing, but you need to do this right. And he stays on him like, this is a $500 fine, $500 fine. What's 500 plus 500? That's $1,000 fine. You better get yourself together. He straight up went Ike Turner on him, like $500 fine. He was like, you better get yourself together. So then we have the Haddons talking, okay? And so Gerald sounds just like his brother Dietrich. Like, they sound just alike. But Tammy feels like Gerald is harder on his sons than his other family in their foolishness. So what we have discovered is that the Haddons got a lot of drama, apparently, that has definitely even traumatized Tammy. So she says that Gerald's family dynamic is dysfunctional. And Gerald said he really only got an issue with the ringleaders of the crew. And Tammy said, who's the ringleaders? And he said one of the ringleaders in their family is Dietrich. I'm not shocked by that, but I also can see how Gerald can be a ringleader too. But I'm sure it's just one big circus. I ain't gonna even hold you. The way Dietrich act and the way he acted on Preachers of LA, I can definitely see that some drama would unfold. But to me, Gerald comes off because Gerald even said that his son needs to come apologize to him. Even when Tammy was saying how she has seen so much chaos in that Haddon family to where she almost thought she needed to call the police one time. And then literally like the next day, they are like having food in the morning and the mama is like, y'all hungry, y'all want some food, and they acting like nothing happened the night before. And Gerald was like, because we're family. And he apologized to me and we moved on. Gerald gives me the vibes that he feels like everyone needs to apologize to him because he does nothing wrong. He gives me those vibes. He said his son need to apologize to him. Dietrich need to apologize to him. He's coming off as if he's holier than thou. Like, well, I do nothing wrong with you, so you need to apologize to me. Otherwise, we don't have nothing to talk about. And that's the way he approached the situation when he came talking about his son. And that's why Tammy said, you are harder on your sons and not as forgiving with your sons compared to how you are with your family. Now, I find that interesting that she said that when he really made it seem like he is super duper supportive over his son being gay. So it really makes me wonder, are you really that supportive? Because if you literally are putting your foot down that you ain't gonna talk to your son until your son apologizes to you. Now, I'm assuming this may not be the same son, but it's given off that, you may have another side to you that we don't necessarily know about. And again, I don't necessarily know, like, and I would like to know, people who are in the chat, for those who are part of the LGBTQIA community, do you have this thing where you feel like people have to accept you and your family have to accept you, or as long as they don't try to bring harm to you and try to cause you any issues and you live your life how you live your life, you don't care what they think about you? I'm curious to know about that, because at the end of the day, I am sure all of you have at least one family member who is anti-LGBTQIA community. Now, sometimes people take it too far, I'm sure, and probably do things that are just not godly. You know what I mean? Because God, Jesus himself, just would not sit up there and say, you can't come to my church, you can't do this, you can't do that. Like, I feel like people who take it that far and do those type of things, I'm like, do you really have God in you? But it makes me wonder if the fact that the son feels like they're not completely embracing his lifestyle, he has an issue with that. Do you feel that they have to embrace your lifestyle, or you don't care as long as they just respect you and they don't try to harm you in any way, stop you from making your money and things like that? Definitely let me know in the comment section. But literally, she was talking to him, and then he tried to sit up there and talk about Pastor Tuck being the first pastor. He was like, Pastor Tuck is the first pastor he knows that has ordained someone gay. Okay. He was like, I've never met, he is the first pastor I've ever met that has ordained someone gay. So my thing is, if you are so shocked by that, then you answered the question that you did not want to answer to Phelps. You answered the question. But you know, one thing about it, Gerald seems to be, I guess, so-called humorous. I think he's funny, but I kind of was turned off by this moment after Tammy spoke to him. He kind of said, you know, Tammy, look, I understand you older than me, but you know, your tone, like, I'm sensitive. Your tone, you got to watch your tone, or whatever the case may be. And while he was trying to make it seem like he was being funny, I kind of feel like he was not being funny, and he was trying to say it in a funny way, hoping that it would just be taken lightly. So, you know what I'm saying? It didn't look like he was being misogynist and being into that mindset. Y'all, when y'all see that third episode, you let me know what you think in that moment. But I kind of felt like, sir, I'm not laughing. I think you kind of passive aggressive with this comment. But with that being said, so far they have 3 episodes. Okay. So far they have 3 episodes. And then they had like an after show, right? They had an after show. And this was the host of the after show. Yeah. Y'all know who that is? Y'all know who that is? That's Larry Reid. Anyone know who Larry Reid is? Hmm? Hmm? So this is why I say, who the heck created this show? Who created this show? And he is hosting the after show. Someone explain to me what's going on here. Explain to me what's going on. Now, Danielle, and look, hey, May, see, here's the thing. Danielle's a part of the community, and she even just said, oh, Lord, Larry. So I don't care whether you're straight, whether you gay, people get that, they get that intuition when someone ain't right. So explain to me why this man is hosting this show, this Christian show. And then you got Jamal Bryant on this show. Yeah, this is why I say this show was interesting, but it's kind of giving me the side eye, because I'm like, I like this show until some people popped up. And then at that point I said, what's really going on? Like, are y'all just trying to get their fan base? You know what I'm saying? You trying to get that new birth clicks and views, and the Larry Reid clicks and views? Like, help me understand. So this is my review on the first 3 episodes. They have not done a 4th episode yet. They did 3 episodes and an after show. I'm not watching this after show. First of all, I don't even like how Larry Reid talked. Just his whole voice annoys me. So y'all can watch the after show and y'all can let me know how the after show is. Make sure y'all hit the like button for your girl, please. The name of this show, even May said, "All hell." Thank you. Thank you, May. The name of this show is called Love and Faith Atlanta. Okay. And it's on Merge TV Network. Because y'all know at the end of the day, I'm going to give props where props is due. They're the ones who created the show and they have their content via YouTube. All right. I'll still put the link in the description, but I still feel like it's worthy to actually look at it and we can have healthy dialogue about it in the comment section, because at least they were willing to have those uncomfortable conversations talking about the sexism and the patriarchy in the church, talking about, do you accept gay people in the church? A lot of people try to avoid those topics. So I appreciate the fact that even while some of them probably try to dodge the question, I appreciate that they was willing to have the conversation, because I think it's important to have, especially in Atlanta, which is at this point the gay capital of the world, especially for the Black community. So I feel like these are topics that need to be had, whether you agree with people's beliefs or not. Because to me, it seems like Bishop Phelps is standing 10 toes down. Angelica, she also said she would not ordain someone gay. She said, "I am there to heal." So she's standing 10 toes down on her beliefs. Jeremy Tuck is saying, "I accept them and will ordain them." It is a good conversation to have. Now, let me see what you guys are saying. No, most of us are used to not being accepted. We just want the respect to live our lives, especially if nobody is getting hurt. It's hard to find a church home that really accepts us and doesn't try to pray the gay away. Usually needs to be non-denominational. And you feel like you still have that problem in Atlanta, Danielle? Even in Atlanta, you still feel like that it's not like real or legitimate? Vivian, what's the name of the show? Okay, I just said that. Wait, I just seen somebody else the same question. Yeah, it's Love and Faith Atlanta. So yeah, I would love for you guys to look at it. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Oh, hey, Kashari. I'm sorry I didn't see you, girl. I did not see you. Hey, girl, I hope you're still here. But so you say it's even hard in Atlanta. I thought they had churches that are very LGBTQIA in Atlanta. They don't? Or do you feel like they're kind of interesting as well? Like, honestly, if I can be honest with you guys, I haven't been in a physical church in a while. I haven't. And I'm explaining to you why. And I've actually talked, well, you guys, I don't know if you guys seen my video about My Grandmother Hates Me. I definitely have a church background, but I will say that I grew up in the church, but I did not know God. Does that make sense for those who grew up in the church? I grew up in the church, but I did not know God. I did not read my Bible. I did not, like, I was just going through the motions of church. Now I am definitely going more and more into the word of God and having and building a relationship with God. But I found myself doing that. And I, feel like because I saw so much nonsense in the church, I really want to thoroughly get into my word and know the word better and literally have a relationship with God, a better relationship with God. So then that way, when I do eventually go back to church and eventually find a church home, I can see the nonsense from a mile away. You know what I mean? And for those who understand what I'm saying. If you don't, you don't. I have learned that you really got to know the word to see the signs of who's real and who's not. Because if you don't know the word, you're going to be able to go into a church and not even really understand that church is not really rooted in God. So I have not been into a physical church in a while. I do like online churches or whatever case may be until I feel like I am at that point where I'm strong enough to find a church home. That's it. That's all. Unless the Holy Spirit leads me another way and says, okay, now it's time for you to go. That's what I'm doing. Getting ready. Vivian said, I'm getting ready to watch the first episode. I know that's right. Definitely. Yeah, May, check it out too. I would love for you guys to come back and give your comments. And then for other people, share with them the show and then share with them this live. And hopefully they're going to have more episodes. And this can be like a weekly thing that we can talk about. Those churches are a mess, more for show and circumstance. Well, that's to me a lot of these churches. It makes me wonder which churches are really legitimate or not. And if you don't really know the word, I think that's how people can get lost in the sauce, like I have in the past. Because honestly, like I told you, the biggest hypocrites I had when it came to Christians was people that was family. Yeah, I said it like that grandmother I talked about. They want our tithes and offering and not to make too much noise. Yeah. And this is why I say I'm very hesitant about pastors and their only job is to minister. Since when should that be a job that you get paid for? The word is for free. And if you're about selling about not selling souls, even though I feel like some of these pastors, that's what they doing. But if you're about saving souls, why should you get paid to teach the gospel? It does not make sense to me. Now, maybe again, I got to get more explanation on that, because I'm thinking like, are you really being creative teaching the word, or you're just teaching the word that's in the Bible? So why is that your full-time job? So this is why I say I respect a Brent and a Eusebio, because they have their other type of income and they have the churches. Not saying they don't get income from those churches, but at least I see that they have their working men and they work a 9 to 5. They just don't have on that pastor hat the whole entire time, because I still have an issue with a pastor riding around in a Bentley or a Rolls Royce or a really nice car when half of their congregation don't even have a car, or they can't even, they literally barely can put the gas in the car. I have an issue with that. I do. That's just how I feel. But yeah, I will put the link in the description box. Come back and let me know what y'all think. And if there was anything else you wanted to talk about that you feel like I didn't cover, but I feel like I covered the main parts of the 3 episodes. And then if you see the after show, let me know what y'all think. Once I saw Larry Reed, notice this man got on all black. Notice he has on shades inside of a building and all of this gothy jewelry on. Look at what he has on. Like, do y'all see this? And you want me to take him seriously being the host of this after show? Come on. But with that being said, please like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you on my next video.